Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got David Forster on. He is the CEO and founder of Systems Over Sweat. It is a strategic advisory group that focuses on building operational efficiencies within kind of home services businesses that have kind of hit a plateau at that kind of $1 to $2 million mark, and helps them come in and build some operational efficiency so that they can scale past that $5 million revenue mark. It's a super interesting episode because a lot of times we have tech founders and tech entrepreneurs on here. He's obviously in the home services world. He's built and sold multiple landscaping businesses, actually a bike retail business as well. And over the years, he's built these operational playbooks that he is now helping to implement into the other home services businesses that he works for. So really, really fascinating episode. So let's get David on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, David, thank you for being on the podcast. Good to see you.
For having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to kind of dig into this. So give us a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Yeah, I'm David Forster, founder of Systems Over Sweat, and I focus on helping exterior service companies is my focus, but really any of the trades to help scale past the 5 million mark. There's that headache from 1 to 5 million. So we put in systems and operations efficiencies to make sure that when they get to that scale, as they're rolling, things come together the way that they should.
Interesting. And how did you kind of get into this line of work? Like, were you in the trades world and just figured out that systems are the reason why people aren't scaling, or maybe just give a little bit of your origin story before Systems Over Sweat?
Yeah, I'm a farm kid from the Midwest, grew up in Kansas on a cattle farm, and just loved working with my hands. So I started doing work for neighboring farmers and stuff as a kid when I was like 8 to 10 years old. Entrepreneurial thing bit me really early. And as I started getting older, started a landscape company, grew my first one after getting married pretty well. And after about 4 years, though, the best thing for our marriage was to sell that company and to focus on us for a little bit. That's a story for a whole nother time.
That's a different podcast.
Best investment that I ever made, though. And so since then, my wife and I have built 6 other companies, sold 3 of them. And now this is our full-time effort of really a season of serving other businesses to help kind of avoid some of the traps and the pitfalls that I've seen throughout the 23 years of building business.
Got it. What were the other businesses that you built, the other 6?
Yeah, we had a book business on Amazon before Amazon was what Amazon is today.
Okay.
And we've had 2 landscape businesses, 3 really, 2 that we sold. And we had a logistics business where we did like a pack and ship where we would come in for wholesalers and like estate sale on online auctions and stuff. And I know there's one other one in there. I don't know how I'm blanking on it, but there's another one in there. So
yeah, well, starting 6 businesses, I imagine they, especially if you sold a few, they kind of run together probably.
The bike shop. I don't know how I forgot. That was our most recent. We just sold. We had a bike shop for the last 7 years, bicycle shop, service and repair, and we just had our little girl a couple years ago, and the retail life was not for us as parents anymore. So.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. And so I guess as you kind of started these businesses, sold them, it sounds like, 3 of them you sold. What happened to the other 3?
We sold 4 of them. The other 3 really just was a season of moving on, and like the amount of work that was there, we were just ready to move on to the next one.
Got it.
Most of them was the next business was already kind of coming to fruition, so it made sense to just keep moving.
Got it. And then, I'm very curious about, I like the title Systems Over Sweat. Obviously, it's kind of like maybe a work smarter, not harder kind of mentality, where I feel like a lot of the services businesses are born out of just working harder. And, I'm a good landscaper, so I'm going to start a landscaping business. But, I'm a good recruiter. I started a recruiting business. That doesn't mean I'm going to be a successful business owner of a recruiting business, right? So what are some of the things that you see that are kind of immediate pitfalls or red flags when you get brought in to help these entrepreneurs? And how do you get brought in? Like, what's the tipping point for them to be like, oh, I need help?
Yeah. The biggest pitfall that I see, the biggest issue is usually control. Because you're right. It's a ton of us in the trades that started out, we were great technicians, and we knew we did really good work, and people loved that, and we were fairly personable, and so we could build a relationship with customers, and we built this thing, and then we needed help, so we hired some laborers, and then it got big enough that, well, now I've got more jobs. I need to hire another crew, and maybe need a crew leader, and then you get to the point where you realize, like, I got quite a few people on my team, and I don't know how to train people. I don't know. Like, I've never had to do this. I was always just a technician, and that stress starts to pile up. Issues start to happen. That's when the statements like, I can't find good people, nobody knows how to think on their own, nobody has any common sense, like that stuff starts to pile up because we've never taken the time to slow down and actually train. And unless you train them like you got trained or trained yourself, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, because if you're a good technician, you hire other good technicians, but then eventually you need to hire frontline people that are doing the work, and you kind of almost assume that they're going to be good, right? And you've got to, especially in landscaping, and I imagine it's very similar in, if you've got an HVAC business or a roofing business, you need to, things are changing, and you've got to keep up with the times. So when you get brought into one of these businesses that are kind of sub 5 million, because I think that's kind of the mark, and how did you identify that as kind of like the tipping point or the roadblock where it's very hard for maybe a technician turned entrepreneur to scale past?
Yeah. I mean, up to that 1.5, 2 million mark, like, you can, with some good grit and just drive, and most entrepreneurs have enough like mental fortitude and capacity to really remember everything that's going on and handle it all, a lot of times in their younger years, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 9 p.m., whatever, and it's fine. And then you just get to a point in your life, you can't hold all that anymore, or just the business has grown to a point where you've got enough people and enough crews, and you're just tired of the questions coming all the time to you because everything's just in your head. And so it's kind of nice. You kind of feel good knowing that, like, everybody has to come to me. I'm the top dog. I've got all the answers. I'm the hero. It's a little bit of a hero complex.
Yeah.
I say that because I've been through multiple seasons of it on my own, and letting go of some of that stuff and empowering other people is the only way to grow and to scale. And you can't empower them without something in place that tells them what's next.
And I guess for the entrepreneur that's listening to this, like, and maybe they're saying, holy crap, that's me. Like, I'm that way, or I'm hitting that point, or I said, I can't find good people and all of that stuff. What are some things that you get brought in, and maybe during your initial consultative call, that are almost like low hanging fruit that you're going to have to like train them on or give them guidance on, that are like, real quick wins that they can at least get past that 2 million mark. But then, obviously once you hit 5, 10, 15, there's a lot more complexity.
Yeah. I actually have like a little bundle of templates that I love that are like the foundation. So I call it the Freedom Foundation Blueprint. And I have a Think Like Me template, how to train a newer employee or however long they've been with you to think like you. It's just a simple conglomeration of questions that roll through your head as the owner. Yep. When you run into a problem on a job site, you've been doing it long enough that just within a split second, 15 questions and answers run through your head of what it's going to impact. How it's going to impact the job cost? Is the customer going to pay for it, or are we going to eat it? Do we have the materials? Do we need to get more materials? Is it going to affect some other part of the property that we need to get an expert? All that stuff, boom, 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 happens in your head, but your crews aren't thinking that way.
Right.
And if you don't train them to think those things, then they're not going to. And so we put together this easy little cheat sheet that they can roll through these questions and think of a few options before they call you, so that when they call, all that's already kind of been taken care of, and you don't have to sit there and try to envision the job site or drive to the job site to look at it and figure it out. You can just, hey, yep, that option sounds good, or hey, don't do that one, do this next option you brought up. And it builds a ton of like ownership and empowerment in your team, where they feel like, oh, he trusts me, or he's coaching me through these things. I know, okay, next time I'm going to do this. And it's cool to see that synergy start to happen. And once that momentum builds, then, there's a handful of other things that we can do that just builds the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also, I imagine if they ask those 15 questions enough, they almost, to your point, think like me. They almost they don't need a cheat sheet. They know these are things that are automatically going to run through your head, just as the owner of the business would have done the same thing. So, yeah. And I imagine some people that works and some people it doesn't, right? I think some people probably they have to have the cheat sheet in front of them at all times because they want to maybe make sure they ask all the right questions and all of that.
It helps you identify somebody to move up in the team as well, too. If it just naturally flows for them and they're like, hey, okay, this, and there's a process in that as well of like bringing them through verification or ownership and releasing them to make some decisions on their own.
That's interesting. And then I guess as you kind of think about the types of businesses, so maybe break down, high level pie chart, if you will, like what businesses do you typically get brought into that are in this kind of $1 to $5 million mark?
Landscape, hardscape stuff is really common, partially because that's where a lot of my network is, and that's where a lot of background is at, and I can identify things very quickly in those businesses. Landscape lighting is a newer sector that's kind of a very specific part of the outdoor industry that has become a little bit more prevalent. But even painting, decks, fences, stuff like that, it's very similar. It's project style or it's service style, and the back end of it is going to be, the skill is different, but the back end is going to operate very similar. The communication to the customer, the team building, the training, materials, all that.
And when you kind of get them to a certain point, right, maybe that 5 million mark is the magic number. You're probably aware that private equity firms are scooping up these businesses left and right in a way to, typically they're these dumb, boring businesses, right, that everybody's buying and all of that. Are you helping to also set the owners of these businesses up to then sell? Or are you kind of trying to help build them a business that is almost self-managing, that they are now a business owner and kind of leader of versus an employee of, if that makes sense?
Yeah. As a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because that's a recent subject that's on a lot of conversations, right? Mm-hmm. In the trades industries, it's kind of polarized. Like there's some that they're building it for that, and there's some that are like very just stubborn against that thought process.
Yeah.
The way I want to build a business is it's up to you, right? Like I'll give you a short little analogy here, but if you wake up in the morning and you know that if something changed today, my health, family emergency, anything, if you knew if I needed to, I could sell this business. It's very sellable. It runs on its own. Or, hey, I just need to be gone for a month to take care of this, but I know that my business is still going to be running and profiting and doing all those things. That's freedom.
Yeah,
we're all looking for freedom in building a business, right? And we have these like visions of what freedom looks like. But when you wake up in the morning and you know that no matter what happens, your business is not going to crumble, whether you're going to sell it or you're not going to sell it, that's like the most freedom feeling I've ever experienced. So that's what I want to help them build.
No, I think it makes a ton of sense because I do a lot of work with private equity firms. Some are buying up these businesses and some are in more of the tech focused space. But I think a lot of their biggest problems that the private equity firms run into is especially in these trades businesses, if they are very owner dependent, the business is very risky for a private equity group or anybody to acquire, right? Because if if the founder leaves, whether by his own need or just whatever, something happens, the business could crumble because it's very dependent on them. And so it sounds like you're providing that founder owner the optionality, like you said, to either stick or twist. If they want to sell it and they get a crazy offer that allows them to go start another business or sit on a beach somewhere, great. Or to your point, they can, and some things that I'm being kind of asked about and being pulled into conversations with these types of businesses is helping the founders, especially the baby boomer generation, remove themselves a little bit from the day-to-day. So almost helping them build operational efficiency, but also find people that maybe are in the business they haven't identified yet, or bringing people in from the outside to almost be that GM level, that kind of second leader level. So the owner can take some time, step away from the business, maybe do something that they really love, like being a technician or being a salesperson, but they don't have to deal with payroll and the other day-to-day, inner workings of the business that they built. Do you get people asking you about like, hey, I want to be able to step away from my business a little bit, to your point, taking a month off and the business doesn't crumble? Do you get those kind of questions about, hey, this could be a good reason to bring you in?
Yeah. And I'd say a big pressure point that does kind of develop the conversation is that exact thing. They want to be able to step back, whether it's they've got young kids and they don't want to miss out on some different life experiences, or they, whether it's a family thing or they've been sacrificing their health for 15 years building this business, and they know now that they can't do that anymore. So they want some time to step back and focus on that. It usually has something to do with one of the other areas of life that needs attention, that the business has been stealing from, and that's a big thing. Yeah.
How long are you typically engaged? So if you have a conversation with a potential client, and let's say they're at that 1 to 2 million mark where they just kind of keep bumping up against that wall and can't break through it, what's your typical engagement or look like, and what's the duration? Broad strokes. I'm just curious.
Yeah, first 90 days is kind of the heavy hitting, looking through things and developing the efficiencies in the systems and kind of revamping or building what doesn't exist yet. And then carrying that out over like a 12 to 18 month period is pretty general for it. And that gets that ball rolling. And by that time, whether we probably haven't hit the full on goal of what we can hit, 5, 10, whatever, that's going to happen over time.
Yeah.
But the momentum is there and the systems are there that then I can either train and onboard like you said, a GM or an ops manager, or a second in command of some type to then take over that role that maybe doesn't have the systems building skill set, but can operate and carry out the systems that we put in place. And then I can kind of just dial back to like quarterly follow-ups to help them make sure everything's staying on track.
If they don't have somebody internally for that second in command GM to, maybe they're not the entrepreneur, but they have kind of an entrepreneurial drive, right? They're risk averse enough that they don't want to go start something, but they are very happy picking up a business and taking that baton and running, to the next check mark, essentially. Where are you finding people if you can't find it internally? What does that process look like?
Yeah. So I have a colleague that I work with that works in the private or the predictive index, like recruiting and hiring, personality stuff.
Yeah.
And that has just proven, I wouldn't say there's any specific place to find the people, that I found that's just like a honey hole or anything.
Right.
But using that process to like narrow down and find the right person that's going to not just fill the role properly, but also match the personality with the owner so that they can be a really dynamic team. That has been very, very valuable in using that. And you can really avoid some of the just hire and try mistakes and costs by doing it that way.
Yeah, I definitely, I've used predictive index and some other kind of personality and kind of just assessment tools out there throughout hiring processes, especially if you're hiring a C-level or executive level type role like a GM would be, kind of second in command, because not only do you need to find the right skill set like the experience, but you need to find that right personality to not only fit in with the owner, but the businesses, whether they actually have family members in them, a lot of times they feel like little families, right? They feel like these family businesses. And so there is some internal dynamics that need to be, made sure that feathers aren't ruffled, right? Sometimes you need to ruffle feathers to keep people moving in the right direction. But when you bring in somebody like a GM, you want to make sure that they, are aligned with the business owner, but also aligned with the path of the business in general.
And here I am saying, like, I should have just turned that question on you.
Well, that's it's definitely something that I'm being asked because I have a similar kind of theory or thing around kind of the private equity exit scenario where some family businesses, they think there's kind of two options. Either I continue to work in the business as is without systems or process enhancements like you're doing because they need the income. Maybe they haven't planned correctly for their future, or maybe they thought their child was going to take over, but they don't really want to run a landscaping business. They want to be, a software engineer or something else. And so they have option one is to stay working. Option two is to sell it, but maybe they don't get enough value because the private equity doesn't value it the same as the business owner does. That's typically how things work. And so I think this kind of, I call it succession recruiting, is like you essentially bring in a GM that will help kind of sort out a lot of these issues and a lot of these operational things, allowing the owner to have that optionality of saying, okay, I want to take a step back, or I want to, sell this thing in a couple of years and go from there. So, as you think about kind of the business that you've been in, and I guess roughly how many businesses have you kind of supported through this kind of systems over sweat kind of process?
Yeah, it's been, it's a fairly recent launch for us. So I think we're at 5 or 6 that we've had some type of support with. Longer engagements, it's less than that, but we even can come in and just do like an audit. That's a pretty popular piece that I've done for some smaller businesses that they just want to see where to fix things, and then they will handle it internally or whatever.
Well, it's almost like hiring a consultant where they come in, they do an assessment, they hand you a playbook, and they say, "Cool, we can do this, but it's going to cost a lot of money," or you can do it yourself. And then most people are like, I'll just do it myself. And then a year later, they haven't done anything. It's just collecting dust on the shelf. Yeah. That's interesting. I guess other than kind of the kind of I lack of control and things like that, what are some of the areas of the business that you're always seeing problems with, whether it's sales or accounting or compliance, like HR? Like what are some of the things, like any family run business or small business, you're going to have to either have some hard conversations with the owner because they may not want to hear what you're about to say, but yeah, I'm curious about the different parts of the business that you get kind of plugged into.
So really the handoffs and the communication is the biggest area. From lead generation to follow up, and then like customer relations after that. I'm huge on developing like the after job relationship, because that's, especially in the service business, like referrals are still huge. You're going to need all the other marketing stuff at some point, but the referrals can still be massively impactful for you. So making sure that all the handoffs are happening, the triggers are in the right spot for the teammates to start handing things off and know when it's their turn, and the communication of how that works, accountability is all kind of wrapped up in that. And then that's going to touch on the sales. It's going to touch on the admin side, because everybody kind of gets involved in that. So the core of it is going to be in that full like customer experience process. So we put a team experience process next to it, and then we just make it like an easy workflow.
Got it. And are you seeing that sales and marketing are the two biggest areas of impact that you can bring in to help systematize? Because to your point, a lot of, you're still getting referrals, but every landscaper has 50,000 Google reviews and all this stuff, and I would probably argue a lot of them are not actual people, but because there's a lot of noise, and there's like, you got Angie's List and all the other things. How do you kind of help coach these folks to stand out if they do want to grow past that $2 million mark? and, build a 5, 10, $15 million business?
The sales and marketing side isn't it's not my initial focus. Because what I do find, especially in the trades, is we fall into that trap of I need to hire another technician. We're busy. I need another technician, and we're not slowing down enough to look at, are my technicians operating at maximum capacity?
Got it.
So really the first step is making sure everything's operating efficiently and profitably. Because if you're at $1 million and at 5% net profit, we need to work on some stuff before we really start trying to shoot. You don't want to be at 5 million and 5% net profit.
Right.
You could be the same thing at $1 million and 15%.
Right.
Let's just for 20% profit where you should be. So focusing on that internal efficiencies and finding where the little leaks are at. And then that creates the profit that then when you want to do that, the marketing side of things, you can do it right. If it's leaking too much, then you're spending all this money on marketing because you need more sales, because you need money, but the systems aren't supporting it. And so it just crushes the whole thing.
So they almost, to your point, I have a job, I hire a tech, I have a job, I hire a tech. So they have all these techs that are, maybe fully loaded, quote unquote. But if you add a lot more marketing dollars to that, you're just going to keep hiring techs, but they may not be as efficient as they should be. And so to your point, if they're operating at almost a break even because they're just dumping money into marketing and hiring technicians, that's, almost spending less money, being more efficient, being more profitable is a better way to kind of approach it than just adding more fuel to the fire. That's interesting.
Build that foundation and then start stacking on it.
Yeah. I'm curious about AI. I mean, AI is in everybody's, tip of everybody's tongue, whether, you're a trade business, you're a recruiter, you're a, SaaS business, whatever. Are you in your business leveraging AI? And if so, how? And then are you helping these trades businesses leverage AI? And if so, how?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
The good news is in the trades, it's AI isn't going to pick up a shovel or a wrench anytime soon. So there's not a lot of fear around AI other than just a not understanding, just a tech understanding, which is starting to go away because of the age of the owners that's coming up, and we're just in a season where it's just more normal.
Yeah.
And so we use it a ton internally for our team to create things faster. That's the main focus of it. Reword some things, make sure that it's done instead of having to edit a bunch of stuff. We're just using it for efficiency. Putting things in place, duplicating things quickly, that kind of stuff. For our clients and for the businesses in the trades, making sure that they understand it, and how they can use it to simplify customer communications. That's one thing that is huge. Hey, it's been raining and we're not going to be able to get there because of, obvious reasons. Most of the smaller trade companies, they don't have anything in place to call those customers, and it's annoying. To have to call that many people and push everything out is just a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So you end up with customers that are like, hey, I haven't heard from you in 3 days and nobody's been here. I'm like, oh, well, it's been raining. I figured you knew. Well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So putting those things in place so it takes it off of their plate, and there's nobody that has to sit there and call people anymore. You can just put those into that automation of, hey, all I have to do is I click this. We send out the rain message. It goes to all the customers, whether they wanted a text or an email. It just makes that so much easier, so much faster. And it's amazing the relational pressure it takes off for the clients.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can have that easy button, anybody that was supposed to be out that day knows what the story is. You kind of help auto schedule, and then all the customers are happy because they got an email or a text message saying, hey, it's raining. And so it's almost like we're not going to be out doing your landscaping today. But to your point, some people are like, well, where were you? You haven't been out here in 3 days. It's like, okay, well, yeah. So we
had to catch up on the other stuff.
That's right. That's right.
And it's not only in weather delays, it's also when we're running on time. There's new things now that I think most people have probably had an experience with. If it sends a message with a picture of the technician that's going to be coming your way, their name, their background. And so when they get there, oh, this is the guy that's supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And it's just more trusting, and you just feel more comfortable when people are coming to your house to do stuff.
Well, that's the other thing. It's, we've lived in this, post-COVID, everybody's at home kind of environment. And, some people are still a little skittish around strangers coming to their house to do work and all that stuff. So I think anytime you can kind of break that fourth wall and be able to show, hey, this is David, he's going to be my technician. He's coming and I can see his truck, is 2 miles away. And it's helpful to kind of, ease any stresses that may be out there. I guess, where do you see your, business going from? Because I can't remember the stat of how many businesses are out there that are going to transition in the next few years in this kind of trades world, which is hence why private equity is getting into it, also being AI resistant, at least at the moment. So I guess, where do you see your business going, and how do you scale your business to, if you got 30 customers came your way, I doubt you have the bandwidth to take on 30 customers tomorrow, right? So how do you scale your business, using some of your systems and processes?
Yeah. So the really fun part about what we do is, if anybody's familiar with EOS or Pinnacle, especially EOS with the visionary and integrator style. So building what I'm building, I'm kind of one of the unique, equal visionary, equal integrator. So I can speak visionary, I can understand and get right on that level, but then I also know how to then take that down and let's make something tactical out of it and get in the weeds. Most integrators are not that way. They can take it and they can get in the weeds, but they can't get up necessarily and see the visionary side of things, or they get worn out quickly. Yeah. So the scaling side of ours is to start building our team and our stable of integrators that maybe aren't entrepreneurial and want to be more intrapreneurial. Yep. And so our plan is to build a team of integrators that can come in and basically do what I'm doing now, on a larger scale. And whether it's short-term or long-term engagements, place them for these service businesses to really have a team that has some power behind it. Yeah, I've gotten to know a few implementers, or actually EOS implementers, which is a little bit different than an integrator. But I've gotten to know a few of them in a group that I'm in, and it's fascinating kind of what their role is kind of over the long haul. They're usually only kind of supporting them, during their quarterly rock sessions or their kind of quarterly planning sessions. But then you bring in this integrator who's really kind of in your day to day, who's helping build the systems. And then it's a lot about accountability too, right? I think that's one of the big tenets of EOS. And so your thought is, because I'm very much a visionary, I have a little bit of integrator. I can get in the weeds, but then I can't. I'm not an implementer. I have too many ideas, and I could probably be a multimillionaire now if my ideas actually were able to be put into fruition, but they're just not, because it's relying on me. But that's awesome that you kind of have an equal footing there. So you're building a lot of integrators so they can essentially take your systems that you've built and then go in and plug them into these companies. And I imagine around accountability, I would imagine a lot of what your role is in after that 90-day sprint of kind of diagnosing what the issues are, identifying kind of the key areas to kind of plug some holes. It's probably a lot around kind of accountability and follow up and making sure that the playbook that you've outlined and implemented is actually being taken to heart and not corners aren't being cut, et cetera, et cetera. Is that kind of what you see in that kind of 12 to 18 month kind of lead way? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And because it's easy for something that's new and different to feel heavy and have resistance and then just go on the shelf and collect dust, like you had said about the consultants earlier. And so that's a big part of what we're doing, is making sure that is not what happens. And that's why I get more involved. I don't want to just be the consultant that tells you what to do. And our team is wanting to really dig in deep and make this happen with you. We're going to be a partner. We're not going to, take ownership necessarily. We're not going to, but we're also not an employee. So we can keep that kind of separated view of making sure that accountability is held tight. It's easier to have the hard conversations. It's easier to dive into things with a different perspective. And we're also bringing a perspective of working with all these other businesses. We can now, kind of accumulate some wisdom and pour that out into some systems that really just brings things together. I'm curious if you get a lot of referral business. And I know you said that you kind of, this is a newer venture. So maybe it hasn't kind of gotten to that full life cycle yet, but a lot of these business owners know other business owners, right? And so it can be a little bit of a
an internal ecosystem that if you do well, if you help, Johnny's, landscaping company go from 2 to 10, Johnny probably knows 2 other landscaping businesses because they're either competitors or friendly or whatever. Do you see that as kind of a pretty easy path of growth for you, just kind of being kind of referred into other services businesses?
Yeah, it has. And even just as young as we are now, most of the business has been from referral, from a conversation. And so, I mean, I'm in a season where I'm very generous. Like I just want to serve and help. And so I might not be the right fit for a business, but that doesn't mean in our conversations that we're not implementing some things that they can do today. Right.
Yeah.
And so even in those conversations has turned into like, hey, this isn't a great fit for what we're going to be able to do. You don't need us. You need this instead. And they'll say, yeah, but hey, I want to introduce you to my cousin or this guy over here, or this colleague. And it's led to some really good conversations so far.
Got it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for what you're doing because of private equity, really jumping into this over the last couple of years and scooping up these businesses, rolling them up. And so I think but I know that there's a lot of businesses that are too small, too operationally inefficient, and also too reliant on the founder to be super attractive to private equity at that stage. So I think what you're doing is super helpful to give them optionality, right? To either give them the ability to go sell their business for potentially life-changing amount of money for them, or to have a business that is a pretty well-oiled machine and they go from working 60 hours a week to 20 hours a month, and they're just there kind of, managing the business. And, that's almost like a passive income stream for them that they built, over the last 20 years. So I really, really think what you're doing is pretty awesome. I guess if we, we're recording this in kind of mid-June 2025, if we jumped on a podcast, 12 months from now, what are maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that you kind of want to have kind of done in your business to, have that podcast be a really exciting one to talk about?
Yeah, I think having that stable of integrators with their unique experiences and things, so that we can start to kind of isolate where we can really bring in specific industry experience and back up with these trades the way that we should. So having that in place, and I think really implementing more AI weapons, if you want to call it, tools, whatever you want to call it, to be able to, I mean, who knows what it's going to be like in 12 months from now, what's going to develop. So staying at the forefront of that and understanding what we can use and what's going to be the most efficient.
Love it. Love it. This has been awesome. David, I could probably ask you, 10,000 more questions about all this, but, want to be respectful of your time and everything. So I really think what you're doing, like I said, is really going to be impactful and really helpful for a lot of people that, they maybe don't know where to go for the answers. And so if they have somebody like you that's built businesses and scaled them and sold them, super helpful, I would imagine. So I do want to wrap this up and end this podcast like I end every podcast with a 3-pack of questions. So first question here is, what's an influential business or influential book or podcast that you'd recommend?
Let's say Who Not How.
Okay.
The book Who Not How, just
Yep.
helping get out of your own way, right? So
it's a book so Dan Sullivan wrote that book, and I am a big fan of it. I'm actually in Dan's entrepreneurial coaching group, and so it is a phenomenal book. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it for sure.
And then follow it up with The Gap and the Gain.
Pretty much everything that he's written, I've absorbed, and you start talking the jargon. Even my wife, I'm like, oh man, I'm in the gap today, like I can't get out of it. She's like, so it's just really funny how that works. All right, second question here. What is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
These are going to be like polar opposites, but they do go together well. Either golf or motocross.
Okay. I have seen the golf cart motorcycle thing. If you've seen those, they're a 2-wheeled golf cart, single person. Obviously, you got your golf bag in there, and it's like the wide wheeled kind of not a dirt bike, but motorcycle. I'll call it a motorcycle. So
yeah,
definitely. That would literally be a combination of those things. So
it'd be like the best day on the course ever.
Yeah.
Or the worst day at the track. One of the two.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. Last question here. Favorite vacation spot?
Does it have to be one I've already been to?
Not necessarily. Maybe an ideal destination to go to. We can add that in there.
I'll stick with for our honeymoon. We went to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And we didn't go to all the touristy spots. There's a little like on the eastern tip, Humacao.
Okay.
And it was fantastic.
Very cool. I have not
back in a heartbeat.
I've not been to Puerto Rico, so obviously I haven't been to that place, but definitely we'll add it to the list here. So, David, man, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time and appreciate you sharing your story. If people want to, learn more about what you're doing, or maybe they are listening and they have a business that could use your help, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, website is systemsoversweat.com, and so there's a good connection there. Gives you some details, or on Facebook. I share a lot of like tactical stuff on Facebook. We can definitely do some chatting there.
Got it. Awesome. David, man, this has been awesome. I appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.